It's a country that rests between the borders of Russia, Turkey, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. It is nestled between the Greater Caucasus and Lesser Caucasus mountain ranges. This country is the Republic of Georgia, and it is here that you will find some of the world's oldest traces of viticulture and winemaking. With its rich history lies what is said to be an archaeologist's paradise. Over the last few decades, excavations conducted at Gadachrili Gora in the Kavimo-Kartli region have discovered great pips from the 6th millennium BC, and in recent years, the excavations being conducted here at Gadachrili Gora have also found great pips that date back to the Neolithic period. Now in 2016, with the sponsorship of the Georgian Wine Association, the National Wine Agency, the Georgian National Museum, and the University of Toronto, the Gadachrili Gora Regional Archaeological Project Expedition, known as G.R.A.P.E, are working toward further understanding its origins and to understand the pioneering methods used behind Georgian winemaking. If we were to go back over 8,000 years ago, we would find ourselves in a world with vast lands undiscovered and some yet to be fully explored. The human endeavor towards establishing cities and civilizations was continuing to evolve, and our control over the environment growing at an ever-increasing pace. This period of human history is known as the Neolithic, or more commonly, the New Stone Age. The past century of archaeological work around the world has uncovered a number of Neolithic societies in a variety of regional and environmental contexts. Despite their separation in time and space, many of these societies have similarities to the Neolithic Georgian experience. The site of Gadachrili Gora is one of them. Excavations here initially began in the 1960s by the Georgian State Museum, but the site was abandoned for many years thereafter, and it was not until 2006, and then again in 2012, that the Georgian National Museum reinstated the excavations.
The site of Gadachrili Gora is a Neolithic site. We are in the process of recovering samples for carbon-14 dating, but it connects in very well with the surrounding Neolithic landscape of this entire region, of this valley. It's an interesting site in many respects. It's interesting in terms of the site formation process. In some areas, the deposition where we've excavated, we've gone down about 10 meters and we still haven't hit virgin soil. In other areas, there are upper levels preserved. It's essentially a two-phase site, but we're discovering through the process of our excavations that there potentially is a third phase that wasn't recovered or observed in the previous excavations or documented very well, and so we are working towards understanding the entire sequence of the site to get a broader picture of life here at this site during the Neolithic period.
So Gadachrili Gora is a really interesting excavation. It is a Neolithic village. There's 2 levels of occupation with a really great level of preservation. So we have a wonderful site to work with to begin from. Now, because we are working with different national bodies, being the Georgian National Museum, as well as the National Wine Agency, we are looking at whether this Shulaveris culture is connected to wine production. So the work being done here is not only to always excavate the village in its entirety and collect as much information we can, is we're paying particular attention to looking for things like paleobotanical material, particularly grape seeds, residue analysis, and whether we can find a ceramic typology that relates to wine production.
Through the collaboration of the University of Toronto and the National Wine Agency, the G.R.A.P.E team has had the opportunity to resume excavations at Gadachrili Gora. With many Neolithic sites already discovered throughout Georgia, Gadachrili Gora has been said to hold significant importance within the Georgian community. This is not only due to its close ties to the Shulaveris-Shomu culture, but it is also where it is hoped that some of the earliest examples of domestic grape pips may be recovered. And for a country that already has a large and vast wine culture, this possibility is tempting, as it could bring us one step closer to confirming that the origins of wine and viticulture do in fact rest in the country of Georgia.
For the region of Georgia, this site is unique insomuch as that it is fairly well preserved. There are other sites nearby, one site, Shulaveris, that we're working on as well, that has just as good preservation. But our efforts here are to, unlike many other sites in Georgia, it's to expose a very broad horizontal picture of the various phases of this site and being able to connect use activities in the various domestic architectures. There are any number of round houses, predominantly round houses throughout the site. And with a horizontal exposure, we'll start to be able to understand the traffic flow patterns within the village. Perhaps through our paleobotanical analysis and our faunal analysis, understand a lot about their diet and what they were eating here and what they were producing agriculturally.
With the site of Shulaveris only a few miles down the valley, the G.R.A.P.E team this season has paid specific attention to not only the connection between both sites, but has also continued to conduct excavations at both locations. Shulaveris was originally excavated in the 1970s, along with Gadachrili Gora and Marneuli Gora. All three sites make up a trio of some of the earliest known Neolithic villages in Georgia that date back to the 6th millennium BC. And it is at the site of Shulaveris where archaeologists have identified the Neolithic Shulaveris-Shomu Culture of southeast Georgia. All three sites have started to answer some questions for the archaeologists here. One of them has distinguished that in the 6th millennium BC, southeast Georgia was most likely well populated, with the culture stretching from Archaeological in the west to Azerbaijan in the east. However, what has been excavated at Gadachrili Gora presents itself as earlier than the earliest levels of occupation at Shulaveris, and this is why archaeologists find the site of Gadachrili Gora rather significant.
It's an important dig for Georgia because it is a site that is very close to two other type sites of the Shulaveris culture. So it's helping us understand a wider culture that existed within Georgia. And I mean, the more information we have, the better we can understand that culture and its position in the South Caucasus. And it's also an important dig for Georgia, obviously, because if we are able to make that connection between wine production and the Shulaveris culture, then that would point towards the earliest origins of wine being in the Southern Caucasus. And that's a huge thing for a country where viticulture and wine production is so much entrenched in their modern day culture, and that we can work towards an infrastructure that supports a tourist industry based on viticulture and wine production, both ancient and modern, and I think that's really great.
The G.R.A.P.E expedition has had a lot of support from the local community, and with Georgia's popular wine culture, one of the major sponsors has been the National Wine Agency of Georgia. Like the Georgian community, and for archaeologists working at Gadachrili Gora, the hopes of further discovering any trace of winemaking and viticulture is what they are all most looking forward to. What drew you to Gadachrili Gora in the first place, and why is it an important project for you?
It's, as you know, National Wine Agency is the agency which is responsible for wine and grape cultivation, wine production in Georgia. That's why our responsibility is for selling of wine, promoting of Georgian wine, and also promoting of grape and wine culture of Georgia. That's why we are here. Is this site interesting for us as an initial point of viticulture winemaking of our country, but not only our country, also South Caucasus and the old world.
It's important to know when we started, how we did wine, how we continue to develop winemaking, and how we work now today. Georgian wine have raisins, roots here in Gadachrili Gora.
This is a good message for the world market in which Georgia entered not a long time ago, and we hope that to make the results of the excavation and also the continuous history of viticulture winemaking in our country as a visit card of our wine on the world wine market.
Well, viticulture and the production of wine, because its origins extend far back into remote antiquity for the people of Georgia, it is a big part of their daily lives. Every farmhouse will have its own small vineyard. Every person has some connectivity to the land, either through their families' villages. They may be living in Tbilisi, but they still have a family farm or cousins that will produce their own wine. Wine imbues their meals, it imbues their iconography, and this iconography we can see on the Neolithic pottery, and so we see the first traditions of representing the grape on the pottery and in some of their artifacts, and that we can trace this through time throughout the historical narratives in Georgia right up until the present day. And so because for their own self-perception, their own self-awareness, wine, understanding the origins of where that came from, allows the Georgian people to connect more with their cultural heritage and their past. And that's really our efforts here, is to give a firm underpinning as to the origins of that tradition in this region.
So the question is, who are the archaeologists working here? And who is it that makes up the G.R.A.P.E team? For the 2016 season, it is professional archaeologists from both the University of Toronto and the National Museum that have taken students from Canada and Georgia as part of an experiential learning field school initiative. Here, students from a variety of academic backgrounds have been placed in Marneuli, Georgia for 6 weeks. During this time, they have had the opportunity to not only learn the ropes of archaeology, but also to test the waters and see if this is a profession they may want to pursue post-graduation.
Well, I think field school is important for students on many levels. The first being that people think archaeology is just, trowel, pulling back on dirt, but it's not. The amount of interdisciplinary skills you need to be successful at field school is countless. You need mathematical skills, some artistic skills, geographical, geological knowledge. It really pulls from any kind of discipline possible. So I think that any student really in any discipline could benefit from a field school education because they get to work with existing skills but also build new ones.
It's been like a really crazy learning experience, and the mornings are very early, but it's been really like eye-opening. I thought there was a lot less paperwork, but it's been incredible.
Yeah, it's a lot of hard work, but it's a lot of fun too, so it kind of balances it out, and it makes you really passionate about what you're doing every day in the field.
A lot of the process that students go through in terms of becoming an archaeologist is much akin, I describe it as an apprenticeship. It begins with your undergraduate degree, and during the course of your undergraduate degree, if you want to make a decision to pursue archaeology at the graduate level as a profession, a field school like this is a perfect opportunity for students to be able to discover, is this for me? Archaeology isn't for everyone. It's long hours, it's hard work, you're living in close quarters, and many people aren't used to that kind of environment. But that's a lot of what archaeological field work is. Recognize that archaeology is both field work, data collection, but it is also and mostly done behind a computer screen in the library doing research.
I definitely think what I'll take away from this is, like the hands-on is probably the most important aspect of it, right? We don't get this kind of experience at school, and it's definitely hard work, that's for sure as well, and you really get an idea of what archaeologists do day to day.
Yeah, you learn a lot in the span of a very short amount of time. And I think the thing I've taken away the most is just how to change and do what needs to be done at the moment and not have to stick to any one plan.
The true value of archaeology is for an undergraduate career, and I believe this very strongly, is that it is one of the true interdisciplinary programs where it brings in language, art, history, religion, philosophy, and the humanities, core humanities, but those are then intertwined with the hard sciences. So we use a total station, which is a scientific instrument that is used by land surveyors and construction sites, and that requires a certain scientific discipline. Similarly, we do artifactual analysis. We're using aspects of geology, aspects of biology, chemistry, physics. These all come together to help us as the archaeologists and the ones doing the interpretation of what all this data means. It gives us more lines of evidence to make better arguments and to demonstrate the validity of those arguments that we're trying to make.
And in a time where much of the world is glued to some sort of technology, it went without saying that a digital communications team would be an added addition to the G.R.A.P.E expedition this season. Communication teams are something of a rare breed within the archaeology world, but with a team of 4 communication specialists and students from the University of Toronto, a new approach to sharing information worldwide became inevitable at Gadachrili Gora. This included blogging, filming, along with on-site photography, conducting interviews, and on a day-to-day basis, keeping the world up to date throughout social media on the progress happening on the archaeological site.
It is unusual to have a communications team as part of an archaeological project. Here at Gadachrili Gora, it's been unbelievably helpful for a couple of reasons. The first is that archaeological projects in general keep all their finds and information about the project kind of secret until they publish, and that's to reduce other people publishing on the same material before a site gets the chance to publish their own material. We have taken a really different angle, in which is that we want communities at every level to understand what we're doing and be okay with it and enjoy the process with us, really. So in order to have that message, we need a communications team. I mean, I look at the work we're doing, and first of all, none of it would have gotten done without a communications team. We wouldn't have had videos made, we wouldn't have had photos, we wouldn't have 360 educational material. Those are all aspects that you need people who aren't necessarily archaeologists but understand the archaeological world, as well as have communications backgrounds. So to have those multifaceted people on a dig is critical to its success.
It's not enough to just have a website where you just post up some information. People are expecting, with the development of social media and the richness of the content on the internet today, people expect more structured communication, use of language that is more easily understood by lay people who may not be as intimate with the archaeological process, and that's not their fault. It's our responsibility to communicate with them. And the idea being is that the more communicative we are with our surrounding community, both locally, regionally, globally, the more people that would be interested in the work that we're doing, and then ultimately perhaps either participate, whether that be through financial contribution, whether that be going back to school and taking classes, or is simply like, hey, Georgia's a really cool place and I'd like to go visit there and do wine tours and so on. So there's many intersecting lines that the communication team is trying to get the message out.
With the G.R.A.P.E season almost at an end, this won't be the last time you will see archaeologists flourishing to Gadachrili Gora. Excavations will resume in the summer of 2017 as part of the University of Toronto's Wordsworth College Study Abroad program. And with the success of this field season, I wanted to know if the G.R.A.P.E team had some last words they'd like to share to the international community about this unique archaeological site.
You could say anything internationally about Georgia and its wine. What would you say? Is there anything unique about it that you would like to share?
Well, many countries produce wine today and excellent wines, but Georgia wine is, I think, it's a special one. Firstly, maybe it's the oldest one in the world, like wine. in Georgia we use our local traditional endemic varieties, which is unique for Georgia, which is adapted for each region of Georgia. Our variety, I think it's important things to discover also, and we do wines with our local Georgian traditional methods also, quarry wine, Kakhetian wine, etc., etc. I think all wine enthusiasts or wine people should know Georgian wine and have to test minimum once one variety, Georgian variety.
I would like to say to the international community, through the success of G.R.A.P.E and our community engagement initiatives, is that this is the way archaeology, this is the movement archaeology has to follow, is that public engagement is important and it's critical to a project's success, and it's not a box you can just check off, but you have to be dynamic about how you do it. And if we continue to treat archaeology as academic archaeology, as in service of science and not the communities that we work in, then it's not a sustainable method.
We can have a plan, we can have objectives, and those are important to establish from the get-go, but as we've seen this field season, and this has been my experience over the last 20 years, you may have a great plan, but the site itself dictates what happens. As we excavate, we destroy. So as we excavate, we come across features that may require us to go very slow and take our time. That may get in the way of some of our anticipated objectives. But what usually ends up happening, and it usually ends up happening towards the end of the project, that's where all the good stuff always happens. I can guarantee you on the last day that we're on this site this year, we will find something that is either confusing, very interesting, and will encourage us to come back. And so that's my hope for this site, is that we can continue to bring students from the University of Toronto to Georgia to help the Georgian people uncover their own past, and in so doing, change everyone's future.
The G.R.A.P.E team look forward to continuing their excavations here at Gadachrili Gora. If you would like to join or sponsor the team, you can do so by going to grape.utoronto.ca. You can also follow the G.R.A.P.E team on social media at Gadachrili Gora. This has been Joey Close, reporting to you from Marneuli, Georgia.